The Toronto Blue Jays made another round of cuts in spring training. They made some roster moves and they sent down some players that we thought may have gotten an extended look in spring training, but it's not going to be the case. So we'll break that down on this episode of Jays Digest, as well as Jose Berrios. With Kevin Gausman slated to miss some time, we don't know how much time just yet, but he's going to be crucial for this Blue Jays team going forward. So I'll break that down and much more coming up next. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vronyis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, Jose Berrios is a very interesting discussion heading into the season because we know that he had that very bad 2022 year where he was the Jays opening starter and he was expected to be the all-star that they went out and acquired from the Minnesota Twins, but he was anything but that. And luckily, the Blue Jays got great contributions from Alek Manoah, Kevin Gausman, even Ross Stripling that year, and they were able to stay afloat despite Jose Berrios being one of the worst starters in baseball. But after last season's performance and the way that he's looking in spring thus far, I think it's safe to say that 2022 was just a blip on the radar for him, and he's a lot closer to what we saw last year. And he had some dominant stretches last season. He looked like one of the best pitchers in baseball. We know he's got great stuff, mid-90s fastball with a ton of movement. I would not be surprised, Nick, and I'm throwing this hot take out there right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins the Cy Young Award this year, especially with Garrett Cole and his injury concerns in New York.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hot take, but it's definitely possible. Before we get into it, hit the like button on this video. Let's try to hit 300 likes on this one before we get into it. Now, Peter, let's just get into the first topic. Let's start with Jose Berrios, and this is crucial. Now, obviously, Kevin Gausman is still has a lingering injury. He says he's hoping to be ready for opening day, but we're not quite sure how that is going to happen yet, especially because, Peter, opening day is getting closer and closer. But let's talk about Jose Berrios. You just mentioned a little bit. He started yesterday. He started and did very, very good. He had a very good season last year. Obviously, his wild card start against the Twins was phenomenal as well. And he has been unbelievable. And as of right now, Jose Berrios and Chris Bassitt line up to start the first two games of the season. The Jays haven't announced anything, and this would make sense, especially if Kevin Gausman, maybe his injury pushes him back who knows how long it's going to be, maybe a few days, a week, or whatever it ends up being. But Peter, Chris Bassitt, everyone is hyped up about him on Twitter. I watched him yesterday. They looked very good. You can see the clips online. Thomas Hall said, I tend not to overreact to spring training results, but I may convince myself to sprinkle on Berrios to win the Cy Young, and he's looked that good. We know his stuff is some of the best in the team. But when he is locked in like he has been to start spring training, Peter, it is scary for the opposing teams. You can see a stat line here in spring training: 5 innings, 4 hits, 0 runs, 4 Ks, 1 walk. He looks as good as you possibly could have asked him, albeit it is spring training. But I don't know. I'm all in here. It's going to be important whether or not Kevin Gausman is healthy. We need Berrios and the pitching staff to be elite if we want to have a chance to contend this year.
Yeah, well, the thing with those two guys, you don't worry about them because they're so durable. Jose Berrios doesn't miss starts. Chris Bassitt eclipsed the 200 inning mark last year, so I'm not worried about those two guys starting game 1 and 2 of the season. Obviously, you want to give Kevin Gausman the time that he needs in order to recover and be dominant like he has been in the past couple of years. But in terms of Jose Berrios and Chris Bassitt, not worried in the slightest about them. What I'm worried about is the back end of the rotation because now everyone gets bumped up a spot. You have Jose Berrios as your number one in the scenario that Kevin Gausman is sidelined. So Yusei Kikuchi is your 3. Who's your 4 after that? Bowden Francis. And he's not an innings eater, at least not yet. He's 28 years old, and he's never had more than 140 innings pitched in a professional season. So where do you go in that 5th spot right now? Alek Manoah hasn't pitched. He hasn't looked good when he did pitch in that one outing against the against the Tigers, sorry. So where do you go? Where do you go if you're the Blue Jays? And this is where the acquisition of maybe an innings eater or bringing up Paulo Espino to the major league roster comes in. It's going to be interesting to follow throughout the rest of spring training. But in terms of Jose Berrios and his Cy Young candidacy, I don't think it's that hot of a take, Nick. I really don't, because Garrett Cole is going to miss some time. The Yankees have basically assured us of that. And those are the betting odds right there. Look at that. I mean, Jose Berrios is in the same discussion as Marcus Stroman, and Max Scherzer is ahead of him, a guy who's been very injury prone the last couple of seasons. So I could definitely see at that value, 51-1, it's worth even putting $2 on it, and you could maybe make $100 of Jose Berrios doesn't miss a start, and those other top end starters in the American League miss extended time. Garrett Cole could be out for a while. Kevin Gausman, we don't know the extent of his injury. Kyle Bradish, I think he's going to be out for the season for the Baltimore Orioles. So right now, as it stands, I think the clear front runner is Corbin Burns, assuming all those injuries hold up. But then after that, it's pretty much wide open. Maybe you could sprinkle a bit on George Kirby, but Jose Berrios is right there in the mix, and we know that he usually leads the league in starts made as a starting pitcher. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's in that conversation come year's end.
Let us know in the comments if you think Barrios has a chance to win the Cy Young. We can look at his stats. I mean, you mentioned it with the innings pitch. He's been the most durable, or one of the most durable starters in baseball. Very, very reliable, and I think ultimately he's going to be a guy who the Jays definitely need going forward. And he's been great in spring training, as have a lot of the pitchers on the Blue Jays. Not necessarily everyone, like Manoah specifically, but a lot of pitchers are doing well. It's going to be interesting to see how it lines up. Again, the Gausman injury is not supposed to be very serious. We don't know how that's going to line up, but I don't think that he's going to be the opening day starter necessarily if they want to give him a few more days rest just to line up his schedule. But let us know your thoughts on that. Now, Peter, let's get into this really quickly here. The Jays are making moves, and one notable guy that we mentioned has been reassigned, and that is Addison Barger and Aurelvis Martinez, really two of them. So Barger, Martinez, and Yasver Zueleta have been optioned to AAA, and Stuart Burrell reassigned to minor league camp. So this is interesting. Obviously, we're getting to the point now where the regulars are basically playing every day, at least for the first 5 or 6 innings. Are you surprised by these two moves? And I guess, what did you see out of Barger and Aurelvis Martinez in spring training camp for the past 2 or 3 weeks here?
Barger looked comfortable, and Aurelvis Martinez was hitting the ball hard, and he looked good at second base as well. So those two guys definitely deserved an extended look, but we're getting to the point now where we're very close to the regular season, and you got to make those tough decisions. And in terms of those two guys, I just think there's too much of a logjam in the infield for the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm not a big fan of him, but Santiago Espinal is still in the mix. Davis Schneider hasn't had the best spring, but because of his major league success that he had last year, I think he's going to get a longer leash than maybe Addison Barger and Aurelvis Martinez. And at the end of the day, we got to remember that they're probably not ready to contribute at a big league level on an everyday basis. And these are two of your top prospects. You want them to develop, and you want them to get better and get regular at bats, and they wouldn't be guaranteed that with the Toronto Blue Jays. So having them sent down to AAA Buffalo, you're allowing them to be everyday players. You're allowing them to kind of be the focal points of that lineup and just allowing them to develop further. And I think that's the most important thing here for the Blue Jays. They have options right now to cover third base and second base. They don't need to rush Aurelvis Martinez and Addison Barger to the big leagues because they have good, capable, serviceable big leaguers at those positions already. So it doesn't make sense for them to make the team out of spring training. Maybe if they were coming out like they were shot of a cannon and they were batting 700 and smacking the ball out of the ballpark, then maybe there would have been a discussion there. But I don't think the Blue Jays saw enough to warrant them making the team out of spring training and taking at bats away from those big leaguers that are on the team right now.
Yeah, we might see a couple of them in September, but I think this is probably more of these two players next year, next spring training. They have a much better chance to make it out of the gate. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know what your thoughts are on this, and do you agree with Peter about his take, potentially Berrios being a finalist for the Cy Young Award? And let us know what your thoughts are on that. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now, and we'll see you tomorrow.